Hi, I'm Matthew, the innovator behind MindfulViews. Sort of a idea that I've been thinking about for a very long time. You see, it's all based on a problem that I always had with pictures. They seemed too flat to me. I always wanted more depth. So the idea of adding additional camera angles, different displays, always appealed to me. But it was never practical. In the age of analog cameras, it's simply too complex to try and coordinate something so difficult. And I kind of put it aside and not really thought about it again. But over the course of my career, and working in innovation within the real estate space, I kept returning to this concept of automation and what we could do within an environment. Add to the mix a couple of years of the kind of lockdown, limited mobility, travel difficulties that we've been having. And the ideas started to gel for me. Thus, these videos and the idea behind them. So, simply put, an array of cameras, very simple, straightforward setup. In other videos, I'll probably elaborate on that if there's interest in knowing. But the more important thing in terms of thought for me, or insight for me, was realizing that the Netflix network existed. So there was a means of distributing all of this for free. In the first iteration, I set up only 3 angles, front, left, right, all at 90 degrees to one another. Over time, I've been refining the model, accepting that people have more displays available to them. And also, I've been finding that the challenge of synchronizing each of the different displays in order is actually much easier than I thought. My next iteration, I'm going to add some sort of a sound. I think that will make it much simpler. But ultimately, the original idea was to use a single soundtrack and thereby eliminate most of the problems with precision synchronization. It's one thing to see something in your peripheral view. You don't need to hear it at precisely the same instant. That said, the mind is so adaptive. This is a kind of environment that the mind would adjust to. But there's more to the idea than that. Because part of the challenge is maintaining a still shot for a prolonged period of time. Many people need a narrative, something YouTube and the internet thrives on is an ongoing and continuous narrative to keep the watcher, the viewer, engaged. I fundamentally disagree with this. I don't think you need a narrative, and I think that various meditation practices and mindfulness practices all over the world make it very clear that it's natural for us to sit back, take it all in periodically, just calm down. And so that's the more social, or say, contributing factor behind my idea. I don't know if it will be helpful. I don't know if anybody will even watch them. But I'm struck by both the extent of the lockdowns that some people are still experiencing and the opportunities around things like guided meditation and what a simple background like this might be able to do by way of enhancing a person's ability to sit still. So, think this brings me to my final point, which is that Mindful Views is also a bit of an artistic statement. I do have a very creative side. And as much as this is a technical thing, there's very much a creative element to it that I hope to not only explore but also improve, make more available, explicit. I'm not sure. I'm struggling with it, as you can tell. But the results so far have been amazing. I've been struck continually by how conditions have cooperated with the results. None of this is scripted. What happens, happens. And so the results are as close to how it would be if you were there as I can reasonably make it. Unfortunately, this means that there's some noise in there. Things happen, but nothing ridiculous, of course. There's also a question in my mind as to how to handle privacy issues. Because, of course, there's people in many of the videos. I've intentionally chosen public locations to try and deal with this problem because I think in a public space, a public park, a person doesn't really have an expectation of privacy, but also it is a public space by definition. It's where we want to share ourselves. It's one of the spaces that is available to mix, mingle, accidentally be recorded. I think that covers it. I suppose there is maybe one further note, which is when I first thought of doing a YouTube channel, I had lots and lots of ideas. There's so much going on in the world that I'd like to comment on, but so much of it is just horrible. For the time being, I've decided to put my energies into Mindful Views instead. So that's just kind of a personal motivation on my part, aside from the creative and technical challenges that it's been. It's also a intention to try and put something a bit more positive out there. If you stumbled on this through the internet, thank you. Actually, if you're watching this, thank you. If you'd like to subscribe, please do. Mostly I'd like comments. I don't know if this is even an idea, but I would like feedback. So I guess that covers it. One more thought. Just watched my first cut, and I can't believe that I forgot to mention the Toronto Park Ravine system that actually is kind of the star of the show. You'll find that these locations are actually quite amazing, and they're all found within very reasonable walking distance of the subways and transit system of Toronto. So, got to mention it because, hey, they star is the Toronto Park system, and not just its majesty, but also how well maintained it is. Yeah, we're very lucky here in Toronto, but of course, if you've been here, you know that. And if you haven't been here, these videos are for you.